You don't expect to find a child's body, alone, in a basement. Her skin, covered in burns, bruises, open wounds. Her lips were split, teeth shattered like broken glass. A message, carved into her stomach, cruel, permanent. She was just 16, and as life faded from her eyes, she whispered one final word: Mommy. This isn't horror fiction. This is the real story of Sylvia Likens, the case that changed America's child protection laws forever. But to understand how a neighborhood became a chamber of hell, you have to understand how one mother's absence gave birth to a monster. Before we show you how this nightmare unfolded, take a moment to hit subscribe, because the stories we tell here aren't just dark, they're true. And some were buried deeper than the bodies they left behind. Because Sylvia's story isn't just about pain, it's about silence, the kind that echoes through locked doors and concrete walls. And by the time someone finally listened, she was already gone. But to understand how a smiling teenage girl became the face of America's darkest child abuse case, we have to go back to where she started. Back to a small town in Indiana, and a goodbye that should have never been final. Sylvia Likens was born in 1949 in Lebanon, Indiana. One of 5 kids, shy, sweet, the kind of girl who covered her smile because of a chipped tooth. Her parents, Lester and Betty, worked the carnival circuit, traveling town to town, selling food. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't stable, but it kept food on the table. Barely. In 1965, they were hired to travel the East Coast carnival route again. They couldn't take all the kids. They had no choice. So they made a decision. They left Sylvia and her younger sister Jenny, who had polio and wore a leg brace, with someone they barely knew. Gertrude Baniszewski, a pale, thin woman, with 7 kids of her own, sickly, chain smoker, always short on money. They'd met her through mutual acquaintances, and she promised to take care of the girls for $20 a week. That $20 was supposed to be security, but it ended up being the price of Sylvia's life. At first, things seemed okay. Gertrude let the girls go to school. They did chores, nothing unusual. But then, the second payment arrived late, and that was the spark. Gertrude exploded. She began punishing Sylvia, accused her of stealing, called her dirty, a liar, a whore. She beat her with paddles, slammed her into walls, refused her food. And when Sylvia protested, when she tried to defend herself, Gertrude's rage grew, and so did Gertrude's children. And soon, even neighbor kids joined in. Kids, beating, burning, starving another child like it was some twisted game. Every day, Sylvia begged for mercy, but no one helped. No one listened. Gertrude encouraged it. She made Sylvia strip naked, screamed insults at her, spat on her, called her filth. Then came the bottle, glass, used in ways we won't describe here, but done. In front of laughing children. Children trained to believe Sylvia wasn't a person anymore, just a toy to be broken. They burned her with cigarettes, etched words into her skin with hot sewing needles, cut her hair, knocked out her teeth, doused her with boiling water, starved her until Then Gertrude did something worse. She threw Sylvia into the basement. Dark, dusty, no mattress, no toilet, no light, no one. Just concrete and rot and pain. These weren't monsters in masks. They were children. Kids, 10, 12, 14 years old, took turns, beating her, spitting on her, watching her suffer. So, how did kids become torturers? Psychologists later said it was groupthink, manipulation, and desperation. They were poor, neglected, raised in chaos. Gertrude gave them permission. And when kids are starved of love, they'll do anything for approval. Even burn a girl alive. Piece by piece. One of Gertrude's daughters, Paula, was pregnant. She kicked Sylvia in the stomach, again and again. Then wrote in her diary, "Had fun with Sylvia today." By now, October 20th, Sylvia's eyes were sunken, her fingers swollen. Sylvia stopped eating, couldn't walk, couldn't sit upright. When Sylvia became too weak to walk, Gertrude dragged her down to the basement. No light, no bed, just cold concrete and silence. She was left in her own waste. Her wounds were infected. Her lips cracked, her fingers bent wrong. But she still had hope. She whispered to her sister Jenny, "I know you don't want me to die, but I'm going to. I can tell." Gertrude made her write a fake letter, claiming she was attacked by a gang of boys. She dictated every word, so she'd have cover if Sylvia died. Then, October 25th, Sylvia tried to escape. She crawled toward the basement steps, collapsed halfway. No one helped. And on October 26th, 1965, in the basement, alone, Sylvia Likens died. Her last word, "Mommy." 2 hours later, Gertrude called police, said a gang had beaten Sylvia, handed them the fake letter. But Sylvia's body told the truth. Bruises, burns, open sores, tissue missing, her fingernails torn. One officer vomited. Another said it was the worst thing he'd ever seen. They questioned Jenny, terrified. She whispered, "Get me out of here, and I'll tell you everything." And she did. Every detail, every scar. Police arrested Gertrude, her children, and several neighbor kids. When Sylvia's mother, Betty, finally arrived, she ran to the police station, begged to see her daughter. But Sylvia was already buried, cold, alone, in a steel drawer. Too late for a hug. The trial of Gertrude Baniszewski was national news. America watched in disbelief. Kids testified, laughed on the stand, said it was fun, said Sylvia was asking for it. Prosecutors called it the most sadistic case ever tried in American court. The jury wept. So did the judge. Gertrude was sentenced to life in prison, but she served just 20 years. She was paroled in 1985, changed her name, lived quietly, and died in 1990 with no remorse. Sylvia was buried in Oak Hill Cemetery. Her tombstone reads, "Our darling daughter." But she became more than a daughter. She became a symbol. Indiana passed new laws for child abuse reporting, mandatory school check-ins, state visits for unverified guardians. Because of Sylvia, thousands of children were protected. And in 2001, her headstone was upgraded, paid for by strangers. It reads, "Her death sparked change in child protection laws. She is remembered." There are stories that scare you. There are stories that break you. But Sylvia Likens' story does both. Because she didn't die at the hands of a monster. She died in a neighborhood, surrounded by other children. Because the world stayed silent. So the next time you hear a child crying for help, don't wait. Don't assume someone else will step in, because someone waited for Sylvia, and she died, calling for a mother who never came.